Good evening, students. All right. So, hope the screen is visible. So, the topic for a detailed discussion today would be Chapter 18, Miscellaneous Provisions. Now, a lot of time it is seen that the students give a lesser importance to Chapter 18, assuming that this chapter has a relatively, a smaller set of provisions, and each provisions deal with an individual topic, distinct topic, without any correlation to the other. And the from an exam point of view also, the students treat this topic as a less important. But in reality, once we will go through these provisions, you will be able to understand that this chapter contains a lot of such provisions which have been asked quite often in the exams. And in fact, in practical and the real world scenario also, when you do your internship or you might have dealt with a lot of tax matters, you would have seen a lot of such situations where these provisions are discussed. I mean, these provisions are kind of relevant in our practice. So, what does this chapter, contain? Now, one clarification here: there is nothing called as miscellaneous provisions under the entire Income Tax Act. It's just that these are the isolated sections which are forming part of Income Tax Act at different places, probably towards the end of the Income Tax Act. And they have been, kind of capped and consolidated into one single chapter. What does this chapter contain, and what are the key provisions that we are going to discuss in detail? Some of the provisions are such which are quite procedural in nature. So we will just have an overview and a brief, a bird's eye view of those sections. But then, except those few exceptions, largely the provisions, for example, Section 269 SS and 269 T, we all have done tax audits in our internship, and we see that there is a specific clause requiring disclosure by the SSE in Form 3CD about the transactions where 269 SST is attracted, and the auditor is supposed to verify and certify that whether the compliance with this section is undertaken or not. So this is what we are going to discuss: 269 SS and T, acceptance of loan or specified amount, and likewise repayment of loan. Similarly, mode of undertaking certain transaction, and that is your 269 ST and SU. Specified financial transaction or statement of financial transaction or reportable account, Section 285 BA. Now, we all are familiar with this section. How you might have seen when you file your income tax return or any of your client's income tax return, the first step that we do is we look at its AIS statement, AIR AIS statement, Annual Information Report, or Form 26 AS. We compare the numbers which are appearing in Form 26 AS, the transaction which are reflected in 26 AS, AIS, TIS. All those transactions are reconciled with the financial statements or the evidences and data that is furnished by the client. Once we receive them, the next step, what we do is we file the return, we report those transactions. Now, often the question arises as to why and how this transaction is required to be reported in AIS and who does it, what are the requirements. So this is a specific section, Section 285BA, which requires certain class of taxpayers, certain categories of companies, body corporates, and several class of assessees to report those specified transactions in relation to the specified assessees or taxpayers with the government authority in the prescribed form before a prescribed due date. Now, this is all coming from Section 285 BA. We have a new provision, Section 285B AA, information, again, reporting requirement in relation to the crypto transactions. Then annual information statement, Section 285BB. These are smaller ones. Now, this is about the disclosures. Now, then we will discuss few provisions which are specifically related to the tax litigation matters. For example, transfer to defraud the revenue is treated or declared as a void transaction under Section 281. So what are the circumstances when this provision is invoked, and what leads to the such a situation? So that we will discuss today. Provisional attachment to protect the interest of revenue. Again, this provision comes into picture when certain tax litigation is happening or assessee is facing some tax matters or potential tax demands. Service of notice. So we have already discussed assessment procedure, appeal proceedings. Now the question arises as to when any officer is required to issue a notice or serve a notice. What should be the way in which the notice must be served? Now this is all provided for in Section 282, 283, and 284. And again, Section 282 capital A, again, very, very important, authentication of notices. Now, you might have come across some recent judgments where, whenever you see any income tax notice, we see a document identification number, DIN number, which is always mentioned on the notice. Now, there is a law which mandates that the tax officer will specifically mention the DIN number on each and every communication that it undertakes with the taxpayers. If there is no DIN mentioned on the notice, then the notice is declared or deemed as an invalid notice, non-est, or having no legal sanctity. Now, that is the significance of this section and practical importance. Just deviating a bit from the topic, as a chartered accountant, I often asked, when you face any tax matter of a client, what is it that you do the first? The first thing is you look at the file of the assessee and you see what are the communications that have taken place. Now, in all those communications, what is important to note is, number one, whether the notice issued by the tax officer, is it authenticated? Is it having DIN and signature? Number two, whether the notice is issued or served in the manner or as per the manner which is prescribed by the law. And lastly, whether the notice has been served within the timeline. Now, timeline is already discussed in relevant provisions, be it assessment, search matter, or reassessment matters. But so far as the manner of servicing of notice is concerned, that we will discuss today. And then we have certain other miscellaneous provisions. So as and when we come across those sections, we will discuss in detail. Now, with this brief overview and bird's eye view, one common rule which we follow in each lecture: participate as much as possible. Wherever you feel that you have any question, please stop me at that moment. Put your query in the chat box. Alternatively, if you want to discuss, you can ask the coordinator to unmute yourself, or you can do it yourself as well, and then raise the question. We can discuss it live. Do not hesitate in asking the question, because this detailed discussion that we are going to have today will not happen again except during the revisionary classes, where we might combine a couple of chapters together and run fast. But at this moment, if you skip the question, then that's your loss. So participate as much as possible. Wherever required, ask the question. Let us start with Section 269 SS. So have you done tax audits and reported the transactions in relation to 269 SS? What is your basic understanding about this section? The intention of this provision? What does it deal with? I'm sure everybody joining this lecture must have done at least, or at least would have seen the tax audit, if not done, might have seen the tax audit. Which clause of the tax audit requires reporting under 269 SS? What do you understand by this section? Okay, all right. Are there any specific situation or interesting questions you have in your mind in relation to reporting requirement in tax audit report so far as section 269 SST is concerned? I'm sure everybody might be aware of this section. I am 100% sure you would have done your tax audits during your internship of 2 or 3 years. What I'm more interested to know is the queries that you have. Any instance, any example? All right. So I understand that you have not done it. So with this understanding, I am discussing this provision in detail. What does this section says? A direct restriction. No person, that means all kinds of person. Definition of person is given under the Act. Individual, HUF, company, AOP, BOI, whatsoever party is concerned. No person shall take or accept any loan or deposit or specified sum. So three things are covered: loan, deposit, or specified sum from any other person. Again, the lender, all categories of lenders are covered, except by account pay check, account pay bank draft, or by use of electronic clearing system through a bank or through such other mode, electronic modes as specified. So, in nutshell, the section is only relevant for the person who is taking the loan. Section 269 SS is for the person who takes the loan, not relevant for the person who gives the loan in cash. So that distinction has to be kept. It is for the person who is taking the loan. He is not supposed to take the loan otherwise than by through the banking, by through the modes which are specified. Largely, these are through the banking channels. If, let's read now the scenario. Number one, the amount of loan deposit sum or the aggregate amount of loan deposit or specified sum exceeds 20,000. The amount of such loan deposit or specified sum or the aggregate of such loan deposit or specified sum is 20,000 or more. So 20,000 या उससे ज्यादा है और आप जो लोन ले रहे हो फॉर एग्जाम्पल कैश में है, नॉट अलाउड. सेकेंड, on the date of taking or accepting the loan, any loan accepted earlier by such person from the depositor is remaining unpaid. So you have to see that if I'm taking the loan today from Mr. X, if I've already borrowed funds from Mr. X earlier, then the amount or aggregate amount remaining unpaid is 20,000 or more. Third situation, the amount or aggregate amount referred to in situation 1 together with situation 2 is 20,000 or more. So if it is less than 20,000 rupees, all right, no violation. If I have an outstanding balance and then I'm taking a further loan, even if it is less than 20,000 rupees, but in aggregate it is exceeding 20,000 rupees and it is in cash, again, there's a complete bar. Now there is some relaxation. This 20,000 will be raised to INR 2 lakhs in two circumstances. Number one, where the deposit is accepted by Primary Agricultural Credit Society or Primary Cooperative Agricultural and Rural Development Bank from its member. Now, we often miss out this aspect. We just go with the words that, okay, Primary Agricultural Credit Society है, PACS है या PCARD है, 2 lakh की limit. No. It is 2 lakh only when it is taking it from its member. Deposit is accepted by these society or rural development bank from a member, then it is 2 lakh. Second, a loan is taken from the Primary Agricultural Credit Society or Primary Cooperative Agricultural and Rural Development Bank by its member. Then the next situation, when this section is not applicable, and this is quite common, I mean, the reasonable exemption. Loan deposit or sum taken or accepted from, or any loan deposit taken from or accepted by. So it is covered both way, from as well as by. Whom? It is by the government, banking company, post office savings bank, any cooperative bank, corporation established by the central, state, provincial act or any government company, any institution, association, body or class of institution which the central government may notify in the official gazette. Now please look at this. Here they are saying higher limit of 2 lakh is applicable in case of any deposit where it's a case of a primary cooperative agricultural and rural development bank. So they are talking about a bank which is essentially cooperative in nature. It's a cooperative bank at the end of the day and it is taken from member. तो 2 लाख लिमिट लागू होगी. यहाँ पे जो दिया हुआ है एग्जम्पशन, एनी कोऑपरेटिव बैंक, तो आप कौन सा फॉलो करेंगे? एनी कोऑपरेटिव बैंक में तो ये भी आ गया. So this is what it is. You have to follow this one. Cases where the person involved in the transaction derive income only from agriculture. तो कोई भी transaction में 2 persons involved हैं. They are deriving the income only from agricultural or where neither of them has any income chargeable to tax under the act. तो दोनों की जो इनकम है या नहीं है, अगर है तो इट इज नॉट चार्जेबल टू टैक्स. देन देयर इज अ मीनिंग ऑफ सर्टेन टर्म जो इलेक्ट्रॉनिक मोड्स प्रिस्क्राइब किए हुए थे, तो वो कौन से हैं? So debit card, credit card, net banking, and all of it. So I don't think you need to remember all of it. It's quite easy to follow. अगर आपने वायोलेट कर लिया सेक्शन तो व्हाट इज द पेनल्टी? वेरी सिंपल, अमाउंट ऑफ लोन इटसेल्फ बिकम्स अ पेनल्टी. आपने 1 करोड़ का लोन लिया, 1 करोड़ की पेनल्टी. 5 लाख का लोन लिया कैश में, 5 लाख की पेनल्टी. सो अगर प्रिस्क्राइब मोड के अलावा आपने जो ट्रांजैक्शन की, ट्रांजैक्शन वैल्यू इटसेल्फ बिकम्स अ पेनल्टी. नाउ क्वेश्चन, question for the participants: whether this penalty under section 271 capital D, whether it has to be levied or imposed during the course of assessment proceedings, after the assessment proceeding, or it is independent of assessment proceeding. असेसमेंट चल ही नहीं रहा है मेरा, मैंने ये सेक्शन वायोलेट कर लिया, ऑडिटर ने टैक्स ऑडिट में रिपोर्ट भी कर लिया, बट मेरा कोई असेसमेंट नहीं चल रहा है. मेरा 143(2) भी नहीं है, 147 भी नहीं है, 263 भी नहीं है, कुछ नहीं है. नो ऑडिट, नो असेसमेंट, नथिंग. So in that case, whether penalty under section 269, penalty under section 271D for violation of 269 SS is allowed or not. All right. So answer could be yes, answer could be no. The question is why. Please don't ask how would department come to know कि आपने कैश में ट्रांजैक्शन किया है. Let's say किसी एसएससी का टैक्स ऑडिट हुआ, how would department come to know? वो सब मत पूछिए. The only question here is, जिसका आपको आंसर बताना है, कि whether penalty proceeding under 271 capital D, is it independent of assessment proceedings or it is dependent on some proceedings under the act by virtue of which penalty can be imposed. Because लिखा तो है any such penalty shall be imposed by the assessing officer. अगर assessment होना जरूरी है. So the answer is, it is not mandatory कि assessment होना ही चाहिए. The penalty under 271D is based on the transaction. It is not dependent on any proceeding. So even if कोई assessment नहीं चल रहा है, even then also if it comes to the notice of officer that you have done this transaction, he can validly initiate the penalty proceeding under 271D and he can impose the penalty. Now let us first discuss 269T, ST's on SUST. Now this section talks about mode of repayment of certain loan or deposit, and this is quite closely connected with 269 SS. SS में बात हो रही थी लोन लेने की, एंड जो लोन ले रहा है उसके ऊपर पेनल्टी। 269T is opposite. It is the repayment of loan which is covered, and जो repay कर रहा है वो तो वही होगा, जो borrower है वही repay करेगा. So it is the same person, but the transaction is repayment of loan. What does it says? Very easy to understand. No branch of a banking company, cooperative bank, or any other company, society, firm, or other person shall repay any loan or deposit made with it or any specified advance received by it otherwise than by an account paycheck, blah, 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 blah. That is through banking channel. If the amount of loan, deposit, or advance together with interest, if any, payable thereon is 20,000 or more. Second, the aggregate amount of loan or deposit held by such person with the branch of a banking company or cooperative bank, or as the case may be, the other company or cooperative society or the firm or other person means all, either in his own name or jointly with any other person, on the date of such repayment, the amount involved is 20,000 or more. So it is on the same way. Section 269 SS is there. It likewise 269T ka bhi second point. And third is again the combination of 1 and 2. The aggregate amount of the specified advance already received, either on his own or jointly with any other person on date of such repayment, together with interest, if any, payable on such specified advance is 20,000 or more. Same exception, 20,000 की लिमिट की जगह 2 लाख किया जाएगा where the deposit is paid by a primary agricultural credit society or P-card to its member, or a loan is repaid to a primary agricultural credit society or to P-card by its member. उस केस में 2 लाख. So easy to remember. Non-applicability of the above requirement in certain cases. कब ये लागू नहीं पड़ेगा? Where the repayment is made by a branch of a bank, obvious cooperative bank, such repayment could be made by crediting the amount of such loan to the savings account, current account with such branch. Second, it will not apply to government, banking company, cooperative bank, corporation established. Now, please note, here it is corporation which is established by central, state, or provincial act. Corporation is different from a private limited company. A government company or any other institution which may be notified in the official gazette. Penalty for repayment, again, same. The amount repaid in contravention of 269T. (269ST) will take it up little later. First, let us discuss some of the important provisions which are part of this, and we will just skip to the main provisions first. Okay, let us take up transfer to defraud the revenue, because these are all that will go in line. As a safeguard against non-realization of revenue due to the fraudulent transferring of asset by a defaulting assessee, it is provided under this section that certain transfers specified in the section will be deemed यानी presume किया जाएगा, prove नहीं करना है, presume किया जाएगा that they are void, illegal, invalid for the purpose of income tax. अब यहाँ पे जो ट्रांसफर की बात हो रही है, ये ऑफिसर के ट्रांसफर की बात नहीं हो रही है. यहाँ पे ट्रांसफर यानी if I am holding any asset and if I am transferring that asset, selling that asset, disposing of that asset, parting with that asset in whatever way, if I am leaving that asset. So all of these situations are covered under section 281. But why would department presume the transfer to be invalid? Let's read subsection 2 and then we discuss. Right? So what does this say? The key condition is during the pendency of any proceedings. So the proceedings must have started, they must have been ongoing, it's continuing. Or if the proceedings have been completed, then before the service of notice by the TRO, Tax Recovery Officer. Tax Recovery Officer कौन है? Now, ये जानना जरूरी है. We all know assessing officer is your jurisdictional officer. We all know assessing officer के ऊपर seniors हैं. For example, the Commissioner of Income Tax, Principal Commissioner, Chief Commissioner, Principal Chief Commissioner. And the list goes. What is the role of the Tax Recovery Officer in this? And what is the hierarchy of the Tax Recovery Officer? Now, what happens if the assessment is carried out by the assessing officer? He will pass an order. Once he passes an order, वो डिमांड रेज करेगा अगर कोई एडिशन है तो. वो डिमांड के सामने एसएससी अपील फाइल करेगा. अभी एसएससी की अपील फाइल हो गई, अपील डिस्पोज ऑफ भी हो गई, ऑर्डर नेगेटिव आ गया. या तो एसएससी आगे जाएगा अपील फाइल करने या रोक जाएगा. अगर एसएससी आगे नहीं जाता, दैट मीन्स हम मान लेंगे कि ही हैज एक्सेप्टेड. दिस इज वन. सेकेंड, एज पर लॉ, अगर एसएससी अपील में जाता है तो सीपीडीटी का सर्कुलर 2016 का जिसपे 20% भरना है हमको टैक्स का, राइट? वी ऑल नो दिस. इफ assessee fails to comply with the notice issued by the assessing officer for recovery of tax or any demand raised under the act, then the only way for the department would be to initiate the recovery proceedings. Recovery proceedings के दौरान मैटर जो है, असेसमेंट तो खत्म हो गया, अभी जस्ट पैसा वसूल करने की बात हो रही है. उसके लिए डिपार्टमेंट का एक सेपरेट विंग है, which is valuation officers, which is tax recovery officers. अभी वो टैक्स रिकवरी ऑफिसर का रोल सिर्फ इतना रहता है, वो कुछ ये नहीं देखेंगे कि आपका डिमांड जेन्युइन है नहीं है, आपकी अपील पेंडिंग है नहीं है. Once matter is referred to them, then they will start recovery process. And वो recovery process के modus operandi and all of it is different. Now, if the in this case, why we are discussing this is there's a specific mention that before the service of notice by the TRO, उससे पहले अगर एसएससी ने कोई चार्ज क्रिएट की एसेट पे और पार्ट्स विथ द प्रॉपर्टी बाय वे ऑफ सेल, मॉर्गेज, एक्सचेंज, गिफ्ट और एनी अदर मोड ट्रांसफर इन फेवर ऑफ एनी अदर पर्सन, कोई भी हो सकता है, such a charge or transfer must be deemed to be void. हम मान लेंगे कि ये void है. Against any claim in respect of any tax, penalty, interest, fine payable by SSC as a result of completion of the proceedings. So आपने assessment चल रहा है, असेसमेंट के दौरान डिमांड भी नहीं निकली, अभी आपने कोई असेट सेल कर दी किसी को, डीड भी बनाई है, डिपार्टमेंट विल से सॉरी, हम नहीं मानते आपका ये ट्रांसफर 281 में, because all of these conditions are satisfied. Now there are certain exceptions to these rules. What those exceptions are? The charge or transfer made by the assessee will not be void अगर वो चार्ज एडिक्वेट कंसीडरेशन यानी कि आर्म्स लेंथ प्राइस, आपने मार्केट रेट पे सेल किया है एसेट, अगर प्रॉपर्टी का मार्केट वैल्यू 1 करोड़ है, आपने 1 करोड़ पे बेचा है और आप प्रूव कर पाओ, तो उस केस में वो ट्रांसफर इक्विवेलेंट नहीं हो। एंड इन एडिक्वेट कंसीडरेशन के साथ एक और भी कंडीशन जुड़ी हुई है, विदाउट नोटिस ऑफ पेंडेंसी ऑफ सच प्रोसीडिंग्स or is the case may be without any notice of such tax or money remaining payable by the assessee। यानी कि आपने ट्रांसफर कर दी एसेट, तब आपको पता ही नहीं था आपके नाम पे कोई असेसमेंट चल रहा है, आपके नाम पे कोई प्रोसीडिंग चल रहा है, या आपके नाम पे टीआरओ ने कोई नोटिस इशू किया हुआ। एंड मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग इज एंड है यहाँ पे, तो एडिक्वेट कंसिडरेशन प्लस नो नॉलेज अबाउट द प्रोसीडिंग्स आपने ट्रांसफर किया, इट विल नॉट बी ट्रीटेड एज इनवैलिड, बिकॉज लॉजिकल है उसमें, यू विल ऑलवेज प्रूव कि भाई मेरा इंटेंशन ही नहीं था, मुझे तो पता ही नहीं था, पता होता और फिर मैंने किया, देन प्रोबेबली देयर इज अ चांस कि मैंने इंटेंशनली किया, मालूम ही नहीं है। सेकंड, विद द प्रायर परमिशन ऑफ एओ, फिर तो कोई सवाल ही नहीं उठ पाता कोई भी तरीके का नॉन कॉम्प्लायंस का, मैंने पूछ के सेल किया है, एंड दैट इज क्वाइट लॉजिकल एंड ऑब्वियस। फिर ये थ्रेशोल्ड दिया गया है 5,000 10,000 का, विच इज फाइन। अब ये असेट किसको कहेंगे? एवरीथिंग एक्सेप्ट स्टॉक इन ट्रेड। The term asset will include land, building, machinery, plant, shares, security, FDs in the bank to the extent to which any of these assets do not form part of stock in trade of the asset. Agar assessee is into the business of dealing in land and building, then it's a stock for him. If he's dealing into capital goods, the machinery, I'm sorry, the machinery is the stock item. If he's dealing in shares, securities, then shares and securities are the stock in trade for him. Fixed deposit can never be the stock in trade. But anyways, so if he's assessee is dealing into these items, then of course it's a stock in trade item. Next, provisional attachment to protect the interest of revenue. ऊपर जो भी हमने डिस्कस किया उस केस में ट्रांसफर हो चुका है एंड ट्रांसफर को वॉइड माना जाएगा। यहाँ पे अगेन असेसमेंट के दौरान या उससे पहले assessing officer can provisionally attach the asset to protect the interest of revenue। भी provisionally attach यानी ये कि एक ऑर्डर पास किया जाएगा, उस ऑर्डर के दौरान वो प्रॉपर्टी अटैच हो जाएगी, you cannot sell it। If the nature of asset is such that you can continue to enjoy it, for example, if you are an owner of an immovable property, he can attach it. After attachment, you cannot sell it, you cannot create a charge against the property, but you can still enjoy the property। And likewise, attachment can also be such that you are deprived from the right of usage of that property। So, पढ़ लीजिए एक बार and then we discuss। Very easy to understand। Attachment of property plus declaring the transfer as a void, ये frequently नहीं होता है। This is on a very rare circumstance। For example, आप विजय माल्या जी का केस ले लो, पता है यूके के रेसिडेंट है, यूके के पासपोर्ट होल्डर है, केस चल रहा है, लिक्विडेशन प्रोसीडिंग चल रही है, अब उसके दौरान वो भाई साहब अगर भले ही इंडिया में हो डिपार्टमेंट कैन प्रोविजनली अटैच द प्रॉपर्टी अगर असेसमेंट चल रही है तो, कि पता है भाग जाएंगे, अटैच कर दो। इसी तरीके से wherever there are certain apprehensions, high profile cases, या फिर where assessing officer has done his homework very well, he knows that it is important to attach the property, then he will do this so that assessee doesn't part with the assets. Now, under this section, AO is empowered to provisionally attach any property of the assessee by order in writing during the pendency of proceedings, whether assessment or reassessment of any income which has escaped assessment, or for imposition of penalty under 271(AA). Where, now this is important, where the amount or aggregate of amount of penalty likely to be imposed under the said section exceeds 2 crore. Now, this attachment will only happen with the prior approval of the higher authority, which could be Chief Commissioner, Principal Chief Commissioner, Commissioner or Principal Commissioner, Director General or Principal Director General, Principal Director or Director. So, ये तरीके की authority covered है. Again, opinion form करना है if he is of the opinion that it is necessary to do so for the purpose of protecting the interest of revenue. Validity of provisional attachment. अभी वो provisional attachment नाम ही provisional है, तो ड्यूरेशन भी तो लिमिटेड रहेगा. अगर नाम में ही प्रोविजनल लिखा है तो इट हैज टू बी फॉर अ स्पेसिफिक ड्यूरेशन. सो वो दिया हुआ है 6 महीने. हाँ, एक्सटेंड कर सकते हैं. एक्सटेंड करने के लिए आपको रीजंस लेने हैं राइटिंग में, वो राइटिंग में रीजंस आप अप्रूव करवाएंगे. हाउएवर, द टोटल पीरियड ऑफ provisional attachment including extension, it is not going to exceed 2 years or 60 days after the date of assessment, whichever is later. So ये टाइमलाइन आपको याद रखना. अभी कई बार ऐसा होता है कि डिपार्टमेंट को तो एप्रीहेंशन हो जाएगा. एप्रीहेंशन से अगर डिपार्टमेंट ने कोई एसेट अटैच कर दी, उसका प्रैक्टिकल इम्प्लीकेशन क्या होता है वो जानना बहुत जरूरी है. इफ यू आर एन ओनर ऑफ एन इमूवेबल प्रॉपर्टी, यू आर अ फेमस बिजनेसमैन, अगर मैंने आपकी एसेट प्रोविजनली अटैच कर दी, जनरली सर्च के केसेस में होता है, तो उसके रिपरक्यूशन ऐसे आते हैं कि वो अगर असेट 100 करोड़ की है ना, वो ऑटोमेटिकली उसका 20 करोड़ प्राइस डाउन चला जाएगा, merely because it is attached by the department. So any government or regulatory action significantly impacts the valuation of the property. भले ही पता चले कि बाद में वो प्रोविजनल अटैचमेंट गलत था, बट उसको प्रूव करते करते जमाना निकल जाएगा. सो कुछ चुनिंदा इश्यूज पे इनकम टैक्स में कमिटी फॉर्म की जाती है. उस कमिटी की रिकमेंडेशंस को लॉ में तब्दील किया जाता है. सो वन सच कमिटी, इनकम टैक्स सिंप्लीफिकेशन कमिटी, उनके रिकमेंडेशन क्या थे? जस्टिस आर.वी. ईश्वर, रिटायर्ड. व्हाट ही सेड? He said that the provisional attachment of property, it could be substituted by a bank guarantee subject to fulfillment of certain condition. बैंक गारंटी यानी कि आप प्रोविजनली प्रॉपर्टी अटैच करने वाले हो, आप एसएससी को बोलोगे, आप करोगे नहीं, आप सिर्फ बोलोगे. एसएससी को बोलोगे कि अगर तू बैंक गारंटी दे देता है कि कल को कोई डिमांड निकली तो फिर बैंक देगी. अब बैंक की गारंटी चाहिए तो यही प्रॉपर्टी में बैंक में जाके मॉर्गेज रख दूंगा. मैं पैसे नहीं लूंगा, मैं मॉर्गेज रख दूंगा और मैं बोलूंगा कि ये अभी प्रॉपर्टी के ऊपर चार्ज क्रिएट हो गया है, जब भी डिमांड निकलेगी अगर मैं पे नहीं करूं तो बैंक विल पे. हाउ बैंक विल पे? इट विल पे अगेंस्ट सेल ऑफ प्रॉपर्टी. सो दैट वाज द पर्पस. अभी इसी रिकमेंडेशन को लेके सेक्शन अमेंड हुआ. सेक्शन 285 281B 3 to 9 नाउ प्रोवाइड्स फॉर फर्निशिंग ऑफ बैंक गारंटी इन लिeu ऑफ प्रोविजनल अटैचमेंट ऑफ प्रॉपर्टी. तो अब एक एक्शन मत लो, उसकी जगह ये फैसिलिटी आपको देना कंपल्सरी है. So all these other sections are very self-explanatory. I'll pause for 2 minutes. You can read it, and then we go. And if there are any questions, आप पूछ सकते हैं. अभी आते हैं AO is empowered to invoke the bank guarantee for failure to pay some specified. एक है रिवोक, रिवोक एक तरीके से विड्रॉल हो गया। एक है इन्वोक, इन्वोक यानी ट्रिगर हो जाएगा कि वो इवेंट यानी कि डिमांड वाला, इफ देयर इज अ डिमांड व्हिच हैज अराइजन and assessee is not able to pay off the demand, then officer concerned will invoke the bank guarantee. He will write a letter to the bank asking the bank to pay the specified demand amount in the notice to the bank directly. Now, if you read it, where a notice of demand specifying a sum payable is served upon the assessee and assessee fails to pay such sum within the specified period, then you may invoke the bank guarantee. Wholly भी कर सकता है, partly भी कर सकता है to recover the said amount. When the assessee fails to renew the bank guarantee or fails to furnish a new guarantee from a scheduled bank for an equal amount within 15 days from the expiry of the guarantee, AO shall, in the interest of revenue, we will again invoke the bank guarantee. Section 281B, subsection 8. Manner of adjustment of amount which is realized by invoking bank guarantee. अभी डिमांड हो गई, बैंक गारंटी इन्वोक कर दी, अभी इन्वोक करने के बाद एडजस्टमेंट कैसे होगी? The amount realized by invoking the bank guarantee shall be first adjusted against the existing demand which is payable by the assessee. So जो crystallized liability है, जो डिमांड रेज हो चुकी है उसके साथ, अगर प्रोसीडिंग ही पेंडिंग है तो बैंक गारंटी इन्वोक नहीं होगी। प्रोसीडिंग खत्म हो गई, डिमांड रेज हो गई, डिमांड रेज को रिकवर करने के लिए assessee has failed to pay, then assessing officer will invoke the guarantee and invoke करने के बाद सबसे पहले वो पैसा जो भी मिलेगा उसके सामने, डिमांड के सामने एडजस्ट करेगा। जो बैलेंस अमाउंट है वो शराफत से he will deposit the personal deposit account of the principal commissioner or commissioner with the appropriate branch. रिलीज ऑफ बैंक गारंटी, आपकी रिकवरी अगर हो गई या फिर आप सेटिस्फाइड हो कि ठीक है अभी बैंक गारंटी की जरूरत नहीं है तो आप रिलीज कर देंगे। Now let us discuss. Okay, all right. सर्विस ऑफ नोटिस, सेक्शन 282 284। बहुत ही इजी है, सिंपल है and easy to remember also. One thing is very, very important. A lot of time we see that if the department, I mean, practically speaking, this section is losing its significance because of recent amendments and the way in which the assessments are happening now and the communication is happening now. What is the way in which the notice is to be served is provided in 282. What the section says: service of a notice or summon or requisition order or any other communication may be made by delivering or transmitting a copy to the person named therein by post or courier as approved by civility. Now, आज की तारीख में communication सब online हो गया है. So first part is, of course, it is part of the section, but practically redundant. In a manner provided in Code of Civil Procedure, in an electronic form, or by any other means for transmission, as may be provided by rules made by the CBDT. Rules to provide for the address for communication. CBDT is again empowered to make rules providing for the addresses to which such communication may be delivered or transmitted to the person named therein. Address in case of different assessee. अगर आप फर्म की बात करें तो किसी भी मेंबर को नोटिस आप भेज सकते हो। HUF तो मैनेजर या एडल्ट मेंबर ऑफ द फैमिली। कंपनी द प्रिंसिपल ऑफिसर, कई बार गलती कर लेते हैं, डायरेक्टर की ऑफिस उस पे भेज दी, शेयर होल्डर को भेज दी, मेजॉरिटी शेयर होल्डर को भेज दिया, एम्प्लॉय को भेज दिया। नहीं, द पर्सन हु इज designated as the principal officer thereof, only he should be served. Likewise for local authority, AOP, BOI, individual में उस individual को खुद को, any other person, the person is in charge of the management and control of affairs of the company or firm concerned. डिसॉल्व हो चुकी है अगर फर्म ही नहीं। वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग क्वेश्चन, ये सब आते हैं। कंपनी बंद हो चुकी है, फर्म बंद हो चुकी है, असेसमेंट खुला या कुछ और इन्वेस्टिगेशन खुला, किसको नोटिस देने का? कंपनी तो है ही नहीं, ना कंपनी है, ना उसका कोई एड्रेस है, ना ही कोई उसका एग्जिस्टेंस है। एनी एडल्ट पर्सन वाज अ पार्टनर इमीडिएटली बिफोर डिसोल्यूशन। सो डिसोल्यूशन के इमीडिएट पहले जितने भी पार्टनर्स थे, उन पार्टनर्स में से एनी एडल्ट पर्सन वाज अ पार्टनर। पार्टीशन HUF था, पार्टीशन हो गया, पार्टीशन के बाद सबने एसेट्स सब आपस में डिवाइड कर लिया। किसको देने का HUF का? द लास्ट मैनेजर ऑफ द फैमिली, एंड इफ ही इज डेड, ऑल एडल्ट्स हु वर मेंबर्स इमीडिएटली बिफोर द पार्टीशन। Dissolved AOP or a discontinued business. In case of dissolved AOP, again same logic, any person who was a member immediately before dissolution. And in case of discontinued business, इस केस में important है, आप देखिए, if a company is carrying on business is discontinued but the company continues. If an individual is carrying on business discontinues but an individual lives. To whom should we serve? The first answer is obviously the assessee. क्यों? बिजनेस बंद हुआ है, assessee थोड़ी बंद हुआ है, assessee is still alive. In case of a firm or an AOP or any person was a member at the time of discontinuance. In case of a company, the principal officer. So same logic. कंपनी अगर एग्जिस्टिंग है तो भी प्रिंसिपल ऑफिसर को देना है, और अगर कंपनी एग्जिस्टिंग है, बिजनेस डिसकंटिन्यू हो चुका है, तो भी उस केस में प्रिंसिपल ऑफिसर। सिंपल टू अंडरस्टैंड। ये याद भी रखना है और ये आपको फॉलो भी करना है। When you handle any assessment proceedings, you have to remember these rules are equally important. You will see, I won't say few, I would say thousands and thousands of cases where the only point of litigation is that notice was not served as per the rules, notice was not served to the correct person, चैलेंज करने वाला बंदा सही होगा हाई कोर्ट में। फॉर एग्जाम्पल, कंपनी है, कंपनी बंद हो चुकी है, तो किसको देना था नोटिस? लॉ में लिखा है इसको देना था, उसको दिया? नहीं दिया, किसी और को दिया। नोटिस इज इनवैलिड, असेसमेंट क्वेश्ड, ऐसे जजमेंट्स है। सो प्रैक्टिकली ऑल्सो दिस होल्ड्स अ ग्रेट सिग्निफिकेंस। आप सिर्फ एग्जाम पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से प्रिपेयर मत होइए, आप अगर प्रॉपरली इस चीज को समझेंगे एंड इसको इम्प्लीमेंटेशन में देखेंगे लाइव केसेस, फिर यू डोंट हैव टू रिमेंबर दिस सेक्शन, यू रिमेंबर दिस सेक्शन लाइफ लॉन्ग एंड इजीली. So this has a very practical importance also, all of it what we are discussing today. Authentication of notice. Okay, interesting question. How can department person make such error of not addressing properly? So एक कहावत है, to err is human. जो गलती करे वो इंसान, right? So it is quite possible and normal for anybody to do this mistake. There is a section which we will discuss about the curable defects. What are curable defects? What are incurable defects? What can be rectified, cannot be rectified? what makes the assessment invalid and what doesn't make the assessment invalid because of those defects, lapses. We will discuss little later those situation, but yes, अभी इस चीज का आप आंसर मान के चलिए कि इंसान है, गलती तो कर ही सकता है ना। आप नहीं करते हो? आप जो एग्जाम में आंसर लिख के आते हो वो सही होता है हमेशा? पढ़ के जाते हो फिर भी गलत हो जाते हैं ना। ऑथेंटिकेशन ऑफ नोटिस एंड अदर डॉक्यूमेंट्स। अब ऑथेंटिकेशन का मतलब क्या है? Where any notice or document is required to be issued by any income tax authority. See, it's quite generic. Any notice, any document required to be issued by any income tax authority, then such notice should be signed, ठीक है, उसका signature होना चाहिए, and issued in paper form or communicated in electronic form by that authority as per the rules and as per the procedure. Now, this is to provide adequate legal framework for paperless assessment for improving efficiency, blah, blah, blah. So this is all fine. We can skip this. Easy to read it by yourself also. Now, I will just skip for now section 285B wala series. Will connect with the relevant connecting sections so that you can take these provisions holistically. So those which are related to litigation only. कुछ सेक्शन मुझे लगता है आज रह जाएंगे, बट वो सेक्शन अपने ट्राई करेंगे कि ब्रीफली कवर करें, या फिर नेक्स्ट सेक्शन में आप याद दिलाना, वी विल कवर देम. Notice deemed to be valid in certain circumstances, section 292 double B, and return of income not to become invalid. अब ये सेक्शन बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, एंड दिस इज ऑल प्रैक्टिकल. आप एग्जाम पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से एक वन एस्पेक्ट है, और प्रैक्टिकल भी है. काफी सारे लोग पूछते हैं, आप बनेंगे चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट, लॉट ऑफ पीपल विल आस्क. Now read this provision first and then we discuss the rationale. ऑफिसर ने नोटिस इशू किया, एड्रेस मेंशन किया, एड्रेस में पिन कोड भूल से गलत लिख गया, बट नोटिस सही जगह पे पहुंच गया, एड्रेस पे पिन कोड गलत है, क्या वो नोटिस इनवैलिड गिना जाएगा? Right? It won't be invalid, obviously. It's a curable defect. So any such defects, likewise मैंने रिटर्न फाइल किया, वो रिटर्न फाइलिंग में मैंने कोई टाइपो एरर किया, टैक्स ऑडिट में टाइपो एरर किया, so it can't be declared invalid as such. It's not invalid return, or it's not an invalid notice, it's not an invalid order, merely because it has certain typos or it has certain errors which does not materially affect the proceedings or the validity of the proceedings. So that is the purpose of section 292B. अभी आप ध्यान से देखिए इसमें जो लैंग्वेज यूज की गई है, mistake, defect, omission, if they are in substance and effect in conformity with and according to the purpose of the law. So in substance in accordance with the purpose of the law. And आप ये चीज देखिए, ये जो है ना mistake, defect and omission, these are not something which are done voluntarily or consciously. These are mistakes, errors. So all of it is a rectifiable thing. It will not make anything invalid. जैसे कि मैंने बताया. Notice deemed to be valid in certain circumstances. Section 292B. अभी इसको भी पढ़ते हैं और इसको थोड़ा डिस्टिंग्विश करने का ट्राई. कुछ डिफाइन नहीं किया हुआ है, सो लॉट ऑफ पीपल चैलेंज द नोटिस फॉर ईच एंड एवरी एरर दैट माइट हैपन और ईच एंड एवरी लैप्स दैट माइट अकर इन द प्रोसीडिंग्स. बट देन सेक्शन 292B के अलावा 292BB भी है. जैसे कि मैंने बताया, लॉ इज वेरी क्लियर. कंपनी के केस में प्रिंसिपल ऑफिसर को नोटिस देना है. अब प्रिंसिपल ऑफिसर की जगह शेयर होल्डर को आप दे के आए, तो क्या उस केस में नोटिस वैलिड होगा? Let's go back. Officer was supposed to issue notice to the principal officer, but instead he issued the notice to the shareholder या किसी एम्प्लॉय के घर पे भेज दिया कि भाई तुम उस कंपनी में काम कर रहे हो ना. सीए को दे दिया, कंपनी के चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट को, क्या आप ऑडिटर हो, पता है आप ही संभालोगे, ले लो नोटिस. इज इट वैलिड? चलेगा क्या? बोलेगा नहीं नहीं, बाद में मैंने तो मिस्टेक कर दी, गलती से इनको भेज दिया, इट वाज एन ओमिशन, इट वाज अ डिफेक्ट. बट प्रोसीडिंग्स तो टाइम पे इशू हुई है, नोटिस टाइम पे इशू हुआ है, उसमें कोई गलत नहीं है. जो मांगा है इन्फॉर्मेशन वो एज पर लॉ मांगा है. इज इट ओके? बताइए, चलेगा क्या आपको? आपकी कंपनी का नोटिस आपके सीए के पास चला जाए तो? राइट. सो दैट मीन्स क्या उसको मिस्टेक बोला जाएगा? मिस्टेक नहीं है. अच्छा, कर दिया तो फिर क्या, व्हाट विल हैपन? नोटिस वाज सपोज्ड टू बी सर्व टू कंपनी और प्रिंसिपल ऑफिसर, बट सीए के वहां भेज दिया, एम्प्लॉय के वहां पे भेज दिया. देन व्हाट? ऐसा कहाँ लिखा है कि देन प्रोसीडिंग विल बिकम इनवैलिड या नोटिस विल बिकम इनवैलिड? So let's read section 92B. डबल बी क्या बोलते हैं? Assessee would be precluded from raising any objection in any proceeding and inquiry that the notice was not served upon him, or it was not served in time, or it was served in an improper manner, if he had appeared in any proceeding or cooperated in any inquiry relating to the assessment or reassessment. अगर आपको इनवैलिड सर्विस हुआ था, मान लीजिए सीए को भेज दिया, एम्प्लॉय को भेज दिया, इनवैलिड है मानते हैं, सेक्शन 282 का वायोलेशन हो गया. बट अगर आपने कोऑपरेट किया है, यानी आपने रिस्पॉन्स फाइल किया, आप अपीयर हुए, फ्रॉम टाइम टू टाइम आपने इंफॉर्मेशन सप्लाई की, आपने हियरिंग्स अटेंड की, यू हैव कोऑपरेटेड इन द इंक्वायरी, तो मान लिया जाएगा नोटिस वैलिड है. In short, if the assessee had appeared in any proceeding or cooperated, it will be deemed that notice required to be served has been duly served upon him, even if actually it is not. and such deeming provision will not apply where the assessee has raised the objection before completion of assessment. ये भी बहुत important है. कई बार chartered accountants might forget that they are supposed to raise an objection, or they might miss out raising an objection. अभी कल ही हमारा डिस्कशन हुआ था अपील्स के रिलेटेड, रिवीजन एंड अपील. तो हमने एक पॉइंट डिस्कस की थी कि एडिशनल ग्राउंड यू कैन ऑलवेज रेज बिफोर एन अपेलेट अथॉरिटी, राइट. आपने अपील फाइल की है, अपील के साथ आपने स्टेटमेंट ऑफ फैक्ट्स, ग्राउंड्स ऑफ अपील अटैच किए हैं, फिर आपने सब्सिक्वेंटली एडिशनल ग्राउंड रेज करना है. उसमें आप लीगल ग्राउंड रेज कर सकते हो, मेरिट्स पे फैक्चुअल ग्राउंड्स वगैरह जो भी रेज करना है कर सकते हैं. सो कैन आई रेज दोज ग्राउंड्स कि मेरे को नोटिस सही नहीं दिया था बिफोर appellate authority, and likewise can I raise this ground before assessing officer also कि नोटिस सही से सर्व नहीं हुआ था. पहले मैंने कोऑपरेट किया, फिर बाद में मैंने ग्राउंड रेज कर दिया कि नहीं ये तो नोटिस सर्विस नहीं हुआ था प्रॉपरली, तो मैं नहीं मानता ये असेसमेंट वैलिड है. Any views? So see, in assessment, while participation is there, it will definitely make your case weaker if you participate in any assessment proceedings and then later on before the appeal authorities or any appellate forum, if you raise this query, that is not going to be entertained. But agar before completion of assessment आपने ये objection raise कर दिया, then you have a good chance to defend your case saying कि notice invalid सा हुआ है, even if you have replied to it. So the key point to remember here is कि नोटिस अगर नहीं सर्व हुआ, इम्प्रॉपरली सर्व हुआ, गलत टाइम पे, गलत वक्त पे, गलत पर्सन को सर्व हुआ, ऑल ऑफ इट शुड बी रेज्ड बिफोर कंप्लीशन ऑफ असेसमेंट. तो उसी ऑफिसर एओ के पास आपको ये चीज रेज करनी. Again, 292C, probably this one is last, and then we go back to 285DA. पढ़ लीजिए शांति से and बताइए what did you understood by this section. By the way, search proceedings have been discussed and completed, section 132. All right, okay, good that you are familiar with those sections. So easy होना चाहिए आंसर अभी आपके लिए, बहुत easy होगा. सो काफी सारे आप देखेंगे इसमें प्रिजम्पशंस है, डीमिंग प्रोविजन वाले सेक्शन है. जैसे पहले हमने देखा कि एनी ट्रांसफर विच इज डन ड्यूरिंग द कोर्स ऑफ प्रोसीडिंग्स, लाइकलीहुड ऑफ डिमांड है, वो ट्रांसफर वॉइड गिना जाएगा. फिर हमने नोटिस के रिलेटेड प्रिजम्पशन देखी, डिफेक्ट्स के रिलेटेड प्रिजम्पशन देखी. अब यहाँ पे ये प्रिजम्पशन ऐसा है कि सर्च के दौरान 132 provision relates predominantly to search and seizure or requisition. It is provided that the books money, bullion, jewelry, other valuable articles. So typically the assets. If the assessee is found to be in possession of or control of these things, then मान लिया जाएगा, प्रिज्यूम कर लिया जाएगा कि यह उसी का ही है. सो जिसके हाथ में है वो उसी का है. एंड इसके अलावा ये भी मान लिया जाएगा कि उसमें जो लिखा है वो सब सही है. आप ऐसे नहीं बोल सकते कि अच्छा ये मेरे हाथ में जो लिखा है, आप डायरी मिली, डायरी में लिखा है कि ए पार्टी को 1 करोड़ दिया, तो आप ऐसे नहीं बोल सकते नहीं नहीं ये तो मैंने ऐसे ही लिखा था, मजाक कर रहा था मैं तो. नहीं, दिस इज ट्रू, आपने ये दिया है, ऐसा मान लिया जाएगा. द सिग्नेचर वगैरह, सो एवरीथिंग इज इन टू द सेम लाइन. अगर डॉक्यूमेंट एग्जीक्यूटेड है, स्टैम्प्ड है, then it is purport to have been executed or attested. इसी के साथ एक और इम्पोर्टेंट प्रिंसिपल, आई थिंक इट इज इम्पोर्टेंट वी डिस्कस हियर. मे बी आपके लिए थोड़ा रिपीटेशन होगा. नाउ इफ यू रिकलेक्ट, सर्च के दौरान ऑफिसर विल विजिट द प्रीमाइसेस ऑफ द एसएससी. घर है, शॉप है, व्हाटएवर इट इज, he will do the search. Unaccounted assets, unaccounted income he might find. He might find certain papers, loose papers, anything which is, generally we call it incriminating material. So any material, anything incriminating assets that he finds, any books of account. Now ये सेक्शन में प्रिजम्पशन है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल एक पेपर मिला एसएससी के घर से जिसके वहां सर्च हुआ, उस पेपर पे ऐसा लिखा है, फॉर एग्जाम्पल सर्च मेरे प्रेमाइसिस में हुआ, and if the officer finds, okay, Mr. Karan, it is written that you have accepted, let's say 50 lakh rupees from Mr. Y. Now I presume that you have accepted, you are having it. So you either show me. If you fail to show me, I will presume that you have nothing more to say, and that is your unaccounted income. Now this is the presumption under this law. But then this presumption is also subject to certain conditions or certain judicial precedents which have held otherwise. What the law says or what those judgments discuss, in case any incriminating material is found, or in case any material is found or incriminating material is found, there has to be a corroborative evidence also. In the absence of corroborative evidence, the presumption will not hold good. So while the law says it will be presumed, but the law doesn't say that it will be deemed that it is your income. It doesn't say that it is deemed that this transaction will result into a taxable implications in your hands. No, that is not specifically mentioned. So the law is कि अगर मेरे घर पे कोई चिट्ठी मिली, कोई पेपर मिला, कोई लूज पेपर मिला, कोई लूज शीट मिली, कोई ट्रांजैक्शन के रिलेटेड ट्रेल मिला, ऑडिट ट्रेल, एनीथिंग इंक्रिमिनेटिंग, that by itself does not mean that I have done that. Of course, there is a presumption in 292C. That presumption is a valid that it relates to me, but that does not lead to the conclusion कि मेरे हाथ में addition result होगा. Department has to find something more, something which is creating a nexus, something which is compelling to hold yes that I have done it. ऐसे तो हो सकता है कोई मेरे घर पे चिट्ठी लिख के रख जाए कि विकरण ने 500 करोड़ ले लिए. Now that doesn't mean that I have taken this. You have to have cash. You have to have some other corroborative cross examination, any cross transactions. You might have found the same thing at other places. You might have found evidences of payment or receipt, anything of that sort. Unless that is there, this is meaningless. Right? So you always remember Section 292C, but also at the same time, what we discussed, the principle that in the absence of any corroborative evidence, merely because something is found from the assessee's premises, yeah, if any asset is found, you can definitely say, okay, this asset is an evidence in itself. But if there is merely a transaction statement, if it is merely a loose paper, a piece of paper, that by itself doesn't lead to that conclusion. Now let us probably take some break. And okay, so before break, I think let us discuss one smaller section and then we jump on to the okay, this one is fine. We can discuss section 285B. What does the section says? Now we'll discuss the disclosure, filing, and reporting requirement. Submission of statement by producers of cinema films or persons engaged in specified activity, section 285B. Now, producer of a cinematographic film or a person engaged in any specified activity or both during the whole or any part of the financial year is required to furnish a statement within 60 days from the end of the financial year or the previous year in respect of period during which such production or specified activity is carried on. So this basically applies to the movie producers. They are supposed to provide the information about the financial transaction or what kind of statement, what kind of transaction. Let's see. And to whom do we have to furnish? The statement has to be furnished electronically to the Principal Director General system, DGIT system, or any person authorized by the Principal DGIT system. What is the threshold? The statement will contain the particulars of all the payments exceeding 50,000 in the aggregate made by such producers or the concerned person or due from him to each person as is engaged by him in such production or specified activity. So, ये चीज आपको ध्यान रखनी है. Transaction, all payments exceeding 50,000. सिर्फ उन्हीं payments की ही reporting करनी है जहां पे payment amount exceeds 50,000 rupees. Now, what is the specified activity? Event management, documentary production, production of programs for telecasting or television or over the top OTT platform or any other similar platform, sports event management, other performing art or any other activity as the government may notify. So, बहुत simple सा section है, nothing much to discuss in this. So, I think in the second half of the session, we will discuss one important provision, section 285 BA, and then some connected provisions, and thereafter we will jump on to the question and answers and some judicial rulings. Yes, I think there's some question. This is cash and otherwise both. Means, I mean, is this a question or you're asking or you're saying that this is only for cash? All right. So So with this, Ashokji, let's take a break and we'll be back in next 15-20 minutes and we'll continue. Okay. Okay, so I think there was one question student was asking, okay, whether section 285B is in relation to cash or both. Now, if you read, the section does not specifically talk about cash. What it simply says that while calculating this threshold, the statement would contain the particulars of all payments exceeding 50,000 in aggregate made by him or due from him to each such person. So payment हो चुका है या even if it is due to be made. In that case, it is required to be reported. So not necessarily cash, it includes both cash or otherwise. ये सेक्शन जो है वो पिछले 10 सालों में काफी इसका इम्पोर्टेंस बढ़ चुका है. It was introduced somewhere in 2014 or 2015, but then over a period of time, the scope of the provision, practical application of the provision, implementation of the provision, it has significantly expanded, improved, and the government has been observing the compliance to this section of late very strictly. They have started issuing notices as well wherever they find that there is a non-compliance. What does this section essentially talk about? We all know Form 26 AS. What 26 AS is nothing but initially it contained the information about TDS and the taxes which the assessee pays, advance tax, self-assessment tax, at that time dividend distribution tax, or even the refunds which were made. TDS means if I make a payment to you and I deduct TDS, then I'll take your PAN, I'll file the TDS return or TDS statement, and then the TDS will be reflected in your account. Now, the section basically is imposing an obligation on certain categories of persons, taxpayers, corporations, and organizations to report certain specified transactions with the CBDT annually by filing the prescribed statement. Now, what kind of or categories of persons are covered, who is responsible, all of this we will discuss. Let's first touch upon who is required to report. And then we discuss what is required to be reported, what are the thresholds, what can be the critical areas or questions. Following persons who are responsible for registering or maintaining books of account or other documents containing a record of any specified financial transaction or any reportable account. So this is very important, specified financial transaction. So we will have to understand what that transaction is or what that reportable account could be. They are required to furnish a statement in respect of such specified financial transaction or reportable account, which is registered or recorded or maintained by him, and information relating to which is relevant and required for the purpose of this law. Now, who are the parties covered? Assessee, that means all classes of assessee. Office of government, local authority, registrar or sub-registrar, registering authority empowered to register motor vehicles, Postmaster General referred in the Post Office Act, the collector, recognized stock exchange, officer of RBI, depository, any prescribed financial institution, reporting financial institution, or any other person other than those referred to in A to K as may be prescribed by the government. Now, what do we mean by the term specified financial transaction? So, literally, they have covered majority of the persons or organizations. Now, let us look at what are the transactions which we call it as specified financial transaction. Any transaction in respect of a property, purchase, sale, exchange of goods or property, or right or interest in a property. Any service transaction, works contract, investment, expenditure, or loan or deposit. So practically all kinds of transactions. Then the section says the CBDT may come up with or prescribe different values or threshold for different class of taxpayers or different class of transactions for reporting purpose. All such transaction or reporting shall be furnished in Form 61 capital A. The due date for furnishing is 31st May. That is, for the financial year, let's say 24-25, the due date would be 31st May 25. For the financial year, which is running financial year 25-26, the due date would be 31st May 2026. If the statement which is furnished by the assessee, that is the statement under 61, if it is found to be defective, that is, you have not submitted any information, the information submitted is incorrect, then you will be intimated about this defect and you are supposed to rectify the defect within 30 days. If the defect is not rectified, then you might be granted further period if you ask for it or voluntarily or suo moto to rectify the defect. If you have not furnished the statement which you are supposed to furnish before the specified time, then the authority may serve you a show cause notice. There are penalty provisions as well, which we will discuss a little later, and will grant you a 30 days time to furnish. If you voluntarily, after furnishing the statement, if you discover any inaccuracy in the statement, then within the period of 10 days from the income tax authority or other authority or agency referred to in 285EA, the inaccuracy needs to be corrected by the concerned person or organization. Subsection 7 authorizes the government to frame the rules in connection with the implementation of Section 285BA. It may specify the persons to be registered with the income tax authority, the nature of information and the manner of filing of information, the due diligence to be carried out by the persons. So we'll see the significance of this term. So likewise, wide powers have been given, and these are mostly procedural in nature for setting the thresholds, for defining the appropriate system in which or through which or the manner in which the information will be furnished. Now, we'll also talk about Rule 114E. Now, this is very important and we should definitely be aware of this because this section is quite practical. We come across these transactions in our day-to-day practice, and so we must be knowing these limits so that we can advise the clients as well. And of course, that goes a long way in exams as well. So what kind of transaction and class of person? The first one is the reporting obligation is on the banking company or a cooperative bank, which is subject to the Banking Regulation Act 1949. Now, what is it that they are supposed to report to the government in prescribed form under Rule 114E? Payments made in cash for any purchase of bank draft or pay order or banker's check of an amount aggregating to 10 lakhs or more in a financial year. Now, please understand what could be the rationale of reporting this transaction, because you will memorize it and then you'll forget. What is important is to understand why this provision, what is the background of this provision, and why does the government wants that if somebody is drawing a bank draft, then he's supposed to then the bank is supposed to report it. Now, you all are registered with the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. I don't know what is the present practice of collecting the fees. In our times, it was that we were supposed to visit the bank. We were supposed to pay either a cash or a check to a bank. The bank will issue the bank draft, and that bank draft will be deposited or given to the institute, and then institute will get the money. Now, this bank draft can be prepared by paying the cash to the bank. It can also be prepared by giving the check. Now, if you already have an account in a bank, same or other bank, you can give a check. But if you don't have a bank account, you can simply give a cash and get the bank draft. Now, this facility is, of course, for those who are not kind of having access to the banking facilities or for various reasons that bankers check or bankers draft has been quite in practice. Now, what is the issue that this transaction needs to be reposted? Now, let's say I'm having an unaccounted money of 20 lakhs and I want to give money to somebody who is not ready to accept cash. He wants the money through the banking channels. I don't have a bank account, and even if I have the bank account and I deposit the money in the bank, then I will receive a notice कि वो पैसा कहाँ से आया, टैक्स भरा है कि नहीं. So I run a risk. So मैं क्या करूंगा, बैंक के पास जाऊंगा, बैंक को दूंगा 10 लाख रुपए, बैंक को बोलूंगा कि ये बैंक ड्राफ्ट बना के दे दो, and I'll give it to the recipient party. अभी इस पूरे सिस्टम में हुआ क्या कि ट्रांजैक्शन मेरे नाम पे रिकॉर्ड हुआ ही नहीं, बिकॉज मैंने तो एक प्रोडक्ट परचेज कर लिया बैंक ड्राफ्ट एंड वो सामने वाले को दे दिया, सामने वाले को रिकॉर्ड हो गया, तो दोनों का काम हो जाएगा. So this is a loophole basically where the system department cannot track those people who are buying the drafts worth crores of rupees, but they are, because there was no such obligation to collect any information from that person or to report it to the government in any manner, because इस पे कोई TDS भी नहीं था. So what the government made it mandatory कि अगर कोई बैंक में आता है stranger, बैंक ड्राफ्ट लेता है, एग्रीगेट वैल्यू ऑफ बैंक ड्राफ्ट इन ईयर इज 10 लाख और मोर, तो आप उस बंदे के केवाईसी ले लो, यानी पैन कार्ड आधार कार्ड ले लो और आप रिपोर्ट कर लो. ठीक है, कोई टीडीएस नहीं काटना है, बट रिपोर्ट करना है कि ये बंदा आया था एंड इस बंदे ने इतने बैंक ड्राफ्ट बनना है. फिर वो इंफॉर्मेशन जो है वो उस बंदे के एआईएस में दिखेगी कि उसने 10 लाख के बैंक ड्राफ्ट परचेज किए, कैश में, अदरवाइज डजंट मैटर. एंड देन in this manner, one can see what was the source of such a deposit or source of what was the purpose of this transaction, whether the transaction has, any kind of challenges from an income tax point of view or potential risk of tax fraud or tax evasion. So that was the logic. Second transaction, payments made in cash aggregating to 10 lakhs or more during the financial year for purchase of prepaid instrument issued by the Reserve Bank of India. Payments made in cash to purchase the prepaid instrument. Third, cash deposit or cash withdrawal aggregating to 50 lakh or more in a financial year from one or more current account of the person. तो current account में अगर आपने 50 लाख डाले या current account में से 50 लाख निकाले, smaller denomination में या लार्जर डिनोमिनेशन, डजंट मैटर, इन एग्रीगेट यू हैव टू सी. तो बैंक को क्या करना है, रिपोर्ट करना है. नाउ देयर इज 194N आल्सो व्हिच यू कैन कनेक्ट. सो टीडीएस ऑब्लिगेशन तो है ही, बट दैट इज बियॉन्ड द हायर थ्रेशोल्ड, यहाँ पे कम है. दूसरी ट्रांजैक्शन अभी इसमें रिपोर्टिंग रिक्वायरमेंट है बैंक के ऊपर और पोस्ट ऑफिस के ऊपर भी. Cash deposits aggregating to 10 lakh or more in a financial year in a savings account or a current account in one or more accounts other than current account and time deposit of a person. Sorry. So current account and fixed deposit account, time deposit account उसको निकाल दीजिए, तो बचता है generally by and large savings account or any other account you might have. उसमें अगर 10 लाख से ज्यादा भरा आपने and वो कैश में भरा, तो the bank is supposed to report it. One or more time deposits other than a time deposit made through renewal of another time deposit of a person aggregating to 10 lakh or more in a financial year of a person. So who is supposed to report? Banking company again, postmaster, nidhi company referred to in 406 of the Companies Act, or NBFCs holding the valid certificate of registration under the RBI guidelines. फोर्थ ट्रांजैक्शन, ये सब आपको याद रखना है. पेमेंट्स मेड बाय एनी पर्सन of an amount aggregating to 1 lakh or more in cash or 10 lakh or more by any other mode against the bills raised in respect of one or more credit cards issued to that person in a financial. But these days आप देखेंगे credit card वाले पीछे ही पड़े रहते हैं. They'll ask you, okay, आप valid हो, आप eligible हो, all of this blah blah information, आपको credit card दे देंगे. अब credit card means what? You don't use your money. You want to buy a mobile phone, you want to buy any asset, you want to incur any expenditure, foreign जाना है, travel कर रहे हो, whatever it is, you pay through a credit card. And then eventually उसका payment तो करना ही है. Once you deposit the money to repay the credit card loan, that money, if it is 1 lakh or more in a cash or through any other mode, if it is 10 lakh or more, then the bank is supposed to report it. उसका logic सिर्फ इतना है कि वो आपकी स्पेंडिंग को रिलेट करेंगे आपकी इनकम के साथ. अगर आपने क्रेडिट कार्ड है, 30 डेज का आपको लिमिट मिलता है, 45 डेज का लिमिट मिलता है, आपके पास 10 क्रेडिट कार्ड भी हो सकते हैं, आप 50 क्रेडिट कार्ड भी रख सकते हो, अलग अलग कंपनी, अलग अलग बैंक का. सो इफ यू आर यूजिंग दोज क्रेडिट कार्ड्स एंड स्पेंडिंग लॉट ऑफ मनी, व्हाट दे विल डू इज, वो क्रेडिट कार्ड से जो भी आप खर्चा करेंगे वो आपकी इनकम तो है नहीं, आप उसके खिलाफ उसके सामने पेमेंट्स जो करेंगे वो आप अपने अकाउंट से भी कर सकते हो, किसी और के अकाउंट से भी कर सकते हो, कैश में भी कर सकते हो. टू एंश्योर दैट एवरीथिंग गोज अकाउंटेड, द बैंक इज सपोज टू रिपोर्ट इट टू द गवर्नमेंट. द मोमेंट इट इज रिपोर्टेड, आपका AIS आप देखेंगे उसमें दिखेगा कि पूरे साल में आपने क्रेडिट कार्ड से कितना स्पेंडिंग किया है और पेमेंट किया है, एंड वो चीज आपकी इनकम के साथ रिलेट की जाएगी. अगर आपने 50 लाख का स्पेंडिंग किया है और रिटर्न फाइल कर रहे हो 2.5 लाख का, so what is the relation between these two? So there is something fishy out here, so they will ask you for the information कि भाई जो 50 लाख आपने पे किए हैं या क्रेडिट कार्ड से स्पेंड किए हैं उसका सोर्स क्या है. So this is all to track you. कुछ टाइम देखेंगे आप इंस्टाग्राम और फेसबुक वालों में भी, मुझे लगता है कि इसमें ये लोग डाल देंगे सेइंग दैट कि अगर किसी बंदे ने पोस्टिंग की कि भाई आई हैव विजिटेड मालदीव्स ऑन सो एंड सो डेज, तो उसका रिपोर्टिंग डिपार्टमेंट में जाना चाहिए, पूछेंगे कि भाई तुम ये कंट्री में घूमने गए थे, इतना खर्चा किया, क्या खर्चा किया, सोर्स क्या है. सो फिफ्थ पॉइंट, receipt from any person of an amount aggregating to 10 lakh or more in a financial year for acquiring bonds or debentures issued by the company or institution other than the amount received on account of renewal of the bond or debenture issued by that company. Who is supposed to receive, report it? The company or the institution which is issuing the bonds or debentures. Likewise, अभी थोड़े easy हैं, आपको memorize ही करना है. Receipt from any person of an amount aggregating to 10 lakh or more in a financial year for acquiring shares, including share application money. So the company which is issuing the shares, it will have to report it. Buyback of shares from any person, a company listed on a recognized stock exchange. Receipt from any person of an amount aggregating to 10 lakh or more in a financial year for acquiring units of one or more schemes of mutual fund. Mutual fund. अभी आप देखेंगे पहले जो ऐसा होता था कि 26 में यू सी योर रिसीट्स, आपको अगर कोई इनकम टैक्स का रिफंड मिला है, ब्याज मिला है, कॉन्ट्रैक्ट रिसीट है, प्रोफेशनल फी है, यू यूज टू गेट दैट. आप वहां से देख के रिटर्न में अमाउंट डाल देते थे एंड देन यू यूज टू फाइल इट. अभी रिटर्न में एक और फंक्शनैलिटी आ गया है, ऑटो पॉपुलेशन ऑफ द डेटा. जो इन्फॉर्मेशन AIS और TIS और रिटर्न में दिख रही है वो ऑटो पॉपुलेट हो जाती है, इंक्लूडिंग टैक्सेस के फिगर, इंक्लूडिंग ऑल काइंड्स ऑफ कैपिटल गेन्स. सो अगर आपने कोई ट्रांजैक्शन किया है और फॉर एग्जांपल इफ यू हैव डन अ ट्रांजैक्शन ऑफ सेल ऑफ शेयर्स ऑन अ स्टॉक एक्सचेंज, तो स्टॉक एक्सचेंज वो ट्रांजैक्शन की पूरी डिटेल्स जो है वो डिपार्टमेंट के साथ शेयर कर देगा इन 285BA. अभी वो इन्फॉर्मेशन
Recording in progress.
चलिए, purchase or sale by any person of immovable property for an amount of 30 lakh or more, or valued by a stamp valuation authority referred to in 50C at 30 lakh or more. Now if you see कि अगर आपने परचेज किया या सेल किया इमूवेबल प्रॉपर्टी का, वो ट्रांजैक्शन पूरा का पूरा वहां पे रजिस्ट्रार या सब रजिस्ट्रार रिपोर्ट कर देगा, प्रोवाइडेड उसकी वैल्यू 30 लाख से अबव है। अगर प्रॉपर्टी ज्वाइंट नाम पे है तो दोनों के नाम पे देखेगी। अभी एआईएस में सिर्फ ट्रांजैक्शन दिखेगी। आप जो ऑफर करोगे वो सिर्फ कैपिटल गेन ऑफर करोगे। अगर आप परचेज कर रहे हो और बैलेंस शीट में दिखा रहे हो, दैट्स फाइन। अगर आप सेल कर रहे हो, कैपिटल गेन आ रहा है, सो यू हैव टू शो इट वेदर इट्स अ कैपिटल गेन, कैपिटल लॉस, डजंट, दोनों में दिखेगा, बट यू हैव टू शो इट इन द, एंड इट इज एप्लीकेबल एंड रिपोर्टिंग रिक्वायरमेंट इज ऑन ऑल हु आर लायबल फॉर ऑडिट अंडर 44AB। And this is about receipt of cash exceeding 2 lakh for sale by any person of goods or service of any nature. तो अगर कोई सेल्स ट्रांजैक्शन हुआ उसमें 10 लाख से ज्यादा रिसीव हुए, तो आपको वो ट्रांजैक्शन रिपोर्ट करनी है। रिपोर्ट करके करेंगे क्या? व्हाट इज द ऑब्जेक्टिव ऑफ रिपोर्टिंग दिस ट्रांजैक्शन? बाकी में तो समझ में आ गया, चलो भी देखने का है कि कैपेसिटी प्रूव करनी है कि भाई किसी ने ट्रांजैक्शन की क्रेडिट कार्ड्स में, वेदर दैट स्पेंडिंग इज इन लाइन विथ इनकम और नॉट, प्रॉपर्टी में कैपिटल गेन हो सकता है, शेयर्स में कैपिटल गेन हो सकता है। ये रिपोर्टिंग करने का पर्पस क्या है? Anyone? Perfect. Due to section 269 ST. This is what I wanted to hear. So the purpose of reporting at serial number 11 is perfectly answered, section 269 ST, because it will be in direct violation of 269 ST, and therefore this reporting will ensure that the person is penalized. And if you remember, I had also asked 269T, 269 SS maybe, if there's a violation, then whether penalty proceedings are independent or not. 269 ST maybe, it's completely independent of assessment. Assessment हो या नहीं हो, penalty impose करने का power है. Now this is very, I think those who have filed the tax return or those who have seen the AIS, TIS, that's quite easy to understand. So we'll just request the participants to go through it once. Now, this is the reason, mainly a lot of time we see that, for example, अगर किसी ने 1 करोड़ की FD करी and bank account is jointly held, तो अगर बैंक अकाउंट इज जॉइंटली हेल्ड, सो दोनों में 1-1 करोड़ दिखता है। एंड लाइकवाइज अगर कोई प्रॉपर्टी सेल हुई 30 लाख की एंड ओनरशिप 50-50 है, जॉइंट ओनरशिप है, एक का 15 लाख है, दूसरे का 15 लाख है, बट रजिस्ट्रार दोनों में सेल कंसीडरेशन दिखाता है, दोनों पैन में वो 30 लाख दिखाता है। एंड इट इज बिकॉज ऑफ दिस, attribute the entire value of transaction or aggregate value of all transactions to all the person in a case where the account is maintained or transaction is recorded in the name of more than one person. अगर 10 लोगों ने मिलके कोई प्रॉपर्टी सेल की, 10 का तो एंड द प्रॉपर्टी का टोटल वैल्यू 1 CR है. सो आइडियली एवरीबडी इज हैविंग 1/10 शेयर, सो सबका सेल कंसिडरेशन 10-10 लाख बनता है एज पर द लॉ, और उस हिसाब से रिटर्न फाइल होगा, उसमें कोई चेंज नहीं होगा. बट जब रिटर्न फाइल जब AIS आप देखेंगे तो सब में 1-1 करोड़ दिखेगा. क्वेश्चन ये आता है उसका लॉजिक क्या है, व्हाट इज द लॉजिक, ऐसा क्यों? कोई लॉजिक नहीं है. So these are the terms. That's fine. We can now let's discuss the penalty. Penalty to failure. Penalty for failure to furnish the statement of financial transaction, SFT reporting or reportable account under 285 BA. So what does section 271 FA says? If a person who is required to furnish a SFT report before 31st May, what is the prescribed date, if he fails to furnish the report within that date, then the power to impose the penalty is not on assessing officer. It is on the director of income tax, CIB, that such a person shall pay by way of penalty a sum of 500 for every day. Such a huge exposure. पर डे के हिसाब से पेनल्टी फिक्स की हुई है 500 रुपए प्रति दिन, अगर आपने रिपोर्ट नहीं की. अगर आप असेसी हो जिसका टैक्स ऑडिट हुआ है एंड आपने किसी के साथ ट्रांजैक्शन किया, सेल का सेल वैल्यू 2 लाख से ज्यादा है, आपने जस्ट वो सेल को डिस्क्लोज नहीं किया, तो 1 दिन की पेनल्टी 500 रुपए है, उस हिसाब से लगेगी. Further, where such person fails to furnish the statement of SFT within the period specified under subsection 5, will pay by a penalty a sum of 1,000 where the failure continues beginning from the day immediately following the day on which the time specified in such notice expires. So अगर आपको intimation issue किया गया है कि आप भैया दो information, and if you still do not furnish the information, then penalty will be double, 1,000 per day only. Right? So this is for a continuing default. हाँ, बट ये अगेन पेनल्टी से बचाने के लिए हमारे लिए जनरल हमारे भगवान वाले सेक्शन 273B CIT, अगर आप रीजनेबल कॉस्ट बता दिए तो आपको CIT माफ कर देंगे. एक इलस्ट्रेशन क्विकली देख लेते हैं पेनल्टी का. सो क्या लिखा है इसमें? बैंक हैज नॉट फाइल्ड इट्स स्टेटमेंट ऑफ फाइनेंशियल ट्रांजैक्शन, यानी SFT फाइल नहीं किया है 25-26 के लिए. ऑफिसर ने नोटिस इशू किया 1 अक्टूबर को. पहले तो मुझे ये जानना है मेरी ड्यू डेट क्या थी. ड्यू डेट वॉज 31 मई और नोटिस इशू किया 1 अक्टूबर को. ठीक है, तो ड्यू डेट के बाद इशू किया. बैंक ने एक्चुअली फाइल किया 15 नवंबर को. सो व्हाट वुड बी द पेनल्टी? सो हम पेनल्टी काउंट करेंगे 31 मई के बाद जो आता है. मई के बाद कौन सा महीना? जून. सो 1 जून 2026 to 31st October 2026. So for 153 days, there's a continuing default. So penalty is ordinary 500. Then notice issue हुआ. नोटिस में लिखा था भैया 31 अक्टूबर से पहले जवाब देना, नहीं दिया तो एक और नॉन कॉम्प्लायंस हो गया. अब उसके लिए हम पेनल्टी फिर से लगाएंगे, वो हम गिनेंगे 1 नवंबर से 15 नवंबर तक, एंड दैट विल बी 1,000 पर डे, बिकॉज जानबूझ के अभी आपको बताया गया तो भी आपने फाइल नहीं किया. टोटल पेनल्टी वुड बी 91,500. तो ऊपर जो भी बात की गई 271 FA, दैट वाज फॉर नॉन फाइलिंग, फेलियर टू फाइल। अभी हम बात करेंगे, yes, that's correct, 153 days into 500, so that would be 76,500. 15 days into 1000. So are you highlighting something different from the answer, or is it same? Your answer is matching? Okay, fine. Fine. Now we'll see कि अगर हमने फाइल तो किया है बट इनएक्यूरेसी है फाइलिंग में, तो उस केस में कितनी पेनल्टी है। सो यहाँ पे वर्ड यूज किया गया है मे, दैट मीन्स इट इज अ डिस्क्रिशनरी पावर, इम्पोज करे भी नहीं भी करे। कितना अमाउंट है? फ्लैट 50,000। अगर हमने इनकरेक्ट इंफॉर्मेशन प्रोवाइड किया है और if I have failed to comply with the due diligence requirement prescribed under 285 BS7. अभी पहले पेनल्टी का प्रोविजन पढ़ लेते हैं, फिर ये चीज डिस्कस करते हैं, व्हाट इज AEOI। पहले मैं पूछूंगा एंड देन आई विल डिस्कस इफ यू डोंट हैव एन आंसर। सेकंड, 50,000 के अलावा the officer concerned may direct the imposition of 5,000 for every reportable transaction, in addition to the levy of 50,000 in case of a prescribed reporting financial institution is required to furnish the statement if it provides inaccurate information. Where such penalty is paid by the reporting financial institution, they would be entitled to recover the sums so paid on behalf of such reportable account holder, or to retain out of any money that may be in its possession, or which may come to it from every such reportable account holder, an amount equal to the sum paid. अभी वो कब होगा? जब inaccuracies due to the false or inaccurate information furnished by the holder of the reportable transaction. अब मैंने प्रॉपर्टी का ट्रांजैक्शन किया, मैंने पैन नंबर किसी और का दे दिया, आधार कार्ड नंबर किसी और का दे दिया, तो सेल परचेज मैंने किया, बैंक अकाउंट में मेरे पैसे आए, बट रजिस्ट्रार ने दिखा दिया किसी और का। अब वो बंदा टेंशन में आ जाएगा जब उसको नोटिस मिलेगा कि तुमने 1 करोड़ की प्रॉपर्टी सेल किया, वो बोलेगा मेरे तो कुछ ऐसा किया ही नहीं है। तो ऐसा बहुत कुछ हो रहा है। सो उस केस में पेनल्टी जो है, पेनल्टी तो रिपोर्टिंग पर्सन पे ही लगेगी, यानी रजिस्ट्रार पे या फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन पे, क्योंकि उन्होंने गलत रिपोर्ट किया है। बट गलती उनकी नहीं है, इनएक्यूरेसी का रीजन ये था कि जिसने ट्रांजैक्शन किया उसने गलत इंफॉर्मेशन दे दी। अगर उसने ऐसा किया है तो उस केस में दे आर गोइंग टू रिकवर इट एंड दे हैव अ राइट टू रिकवर इट। अभी ये समझते हैं। मुझे ये बताइए, व्हाट डू यू अंडरस्टैंड बाय द टर्म CRS and automatic exchange of information, and also global forum on transparency and exchange of information for tax purpose? इन तीनों टर्म्स का मतलब बताइए, क्या जानते हैं आप इनके बारे में? वेयर हैव यू हर्ड अबाउट दिस? एनीबडी वुड वांट? फटका? ओके, आगे आगे। और व्हाट डू यू अंडरस्टैंड बाय CRS, ऑटोमेटिक एक्सचेंज ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन? व्हाट इज फटका? थोड़ा बताइए। These are all interview questions apart from exams. So it has importance for interviews, exams, as well as once you come into practice. You should be knowing it. What is CRS? What is its full form? And likha hai, while reviewing India's CRS legislative framework, the Global Forum on Transparency has formed a view that the penal section available under 271 FAA for inaccuracies will not automatically extend to all cases where due diligence was not correctly done if the information did not lead to incorrect reporting. Okay, so let me give a brief. Okay, let me ask differently. OECD का हमने नाम सुना है. OECD, what is OECD? Or United Nations? Now, what does they do? Is India part of OECD? Is India a member of OECD? Yes, India is member of OECD. Sure. All right. So India is not a member of OECD. India is an observer status. So what is happening is हमने ये तो देख लिया कि 285B, BA, BAA ये sections जो हैं उसमें कुछ transaction के related reporting requirement है on the bank, post office, financial institution, registrar, all of it. To ensure, what is the objective? कि कोई ट्रांजैक्शन हुआ है अच्छे से रिपोर्ट नहीं करे तो पता कैसे चलेगा? कुछ पता नहीं, बट अभी पता चलेगा क्योंकि वो सिस्टम इमीडिएटली थ्रो कर देगा इंफॉर्मेशन. Now, what does OECD do and what is the CRS AUI? Section 90, if you all know. Section 90, 91, they all deal with the double tax avoidance agreement. यानी ये section इंडिया को authorize करता है कि Indian government can negotiate and enter into a tax treaty with the foreign country. It can also enter into a treaty for exchange of information. Now, if somebody is a resident of India or citizen of India staying in the country, liable to pay tax, all of it, if he's having an undisclosed asset outside India, an undisclosed investment outside India, in that case, how would the government know? So previously, there were no ways and means through which you can get that information automatically. It was largely in a case where a particular situation or a particular case is discovered. The officer concerned, by using the treaty, he will reach out to the government of that country, and it would take years and years of time and a lot of effort to get some confirmation or information about that particular person or a particular transaction. Now they said, no, this is not the good way. Let's design some systems. So OECD has developed different tools. Now those tools are used to automatically report the transaction. That is called as Common Reporting Standard and Automatic Exchange of Information Framework. So it has come out with a framework and if you follow that framework, what will happen? All Indians having a bank account in Switzerland or any foreign jurisdiction or concerned jurisdiction which is part of this exchange of information framework and which has ratified the treaty with India and agreed to share the information automatically. If anybody who is an Indian having an account offshore in US or in any other territory, that government, by following the automatic exchange of information framework, will automatically transfer all the information. Even if Indian government has not asked, Indian government will get their details automatically each year so that the government can verify that whatever information that is disclosed or provided by the foreign government, that has been reported in the income tax act. And if it has not been reported, what is the reason? It can inquire, it can get into the source of such asset or such undisclosed income. So this is the brief packet. So far as FATCA is concerned, FATCA. Now this FATCA is basically a legislative action by the government of United States. Now USA was the pioneer in this area. They came out with a rule for an account. I don't exactly remember the full name, but yeah, that's the foreign legislation. Now they have mandated all the financial institutions across the world to report the information about the US citizens, US companies, and likewise there are different categories and transactions. So anything that has got bearing or some relevance with the US tax obligations. So this is what is AUI, FATCA. Now this Global Forum on Transparency and Exchange of Information, it is nothing but a body, an organization which is created to monitor, to peer review, to design the guidelines, to assist in implementation to the countries, to implement this all exchange of information frameworks in their domestic law and the domestic systems. Now, this is a new section 285B AA, obligation to furnish information on transaction of crypto asset. Now, what is the meaning of crypto asset? And चलो मीनिंग में अगर नहीं जाते तो वो बताइए कि what do you how do you invest? What is the way in which one invests in crypto? Anything you know about crypto transaction, please share. Please don't say Bitcoin. No. What do you understand by crypto? Everybody knows Bitcoin. It's a crypto asset, but what's your understanding of Bitcoin? That is what I'm asking. And second, how do you invest into it? Are there any regulations in India? Outside India, you know, the way in which you deal. Whatever you limited knowledge you have about crypto, please share. Not the tax. 30%, it is all fine. If I ask you what is crypto, or let's say if you don't have a technical answer, second question, how do you invest in crypto? Crypto में invest कैसे करते? How do you invest in a stock market? If you want to buy a share of a company, how do you do it? If I want to buy the shares of Reliance, how do I do it? Through exchange, right? Now, if I want to buy the Bitcoin, how do I do it? Can I go to bank and tell them, okay, I want to buy a crypto, credit in my demat statement? Right. So I think all these answers are right. You can go to CoinSitch, you can go to apps, websites, and you get it. Now, what the government is doing right now is, if I want to open a Gmail account, what I'll do, I'll type my name, address, mobile number, there'll be an OTP, and then I get my Gmail account. I don't provide my PAN number, Aadhaar number, nothing. If I want to open a bank account, I provide PAN and Aadhaar because it's a KYC compliant account. It's mandatory. But if I want to have a crypto transaction, I go to apps, I go to websites, as somebody has rightly mentioned, CoinSwitch or anything of that sort. And then through that same email ID, without providing PAN or without providing Aadhaar, I can simply buy the cryptocurrency. So that so far is significantly unregulated market. Gradually, we are seeing some changes happening. They are gradually mandating the KYC, but largely all the foreign exchanges, they are simply very easy. You simply make an international bank transfer and the crypto gets credited in your wallet or in your account ID. And you can use that crypto to transact. Now the question comes, a lot of unaccounted money in India or abroad is basically blocked in the crypto assets. It can be proceeds of crime. It can be on account of violation of FEMA, exchange control laws, violation of tax laws. It could be a black money. It could be anything. So now how do you know about it? 285BA is definitely there. But if you see, there are reporting entities, they do not do these transactions and they do not have those platforms. So government said, okay, that transaction is really a serious transaction that requires some kind of monitoring because a lot of unaccounted money goes into those dealings. They introduced this section 285BAA so that they can trace this transaction because you really don't need the PAN number. So if you really don't need a PAN number to buy the crypto, you can simply get it. So that's the purpose of this section. Now just read it, on whom the obligation it is. Rest of the things are exactly in the same fashion. Probably days are different. Reporting requirement, inaccuracies, penalties, and all of it is mentioned. Now this section is imposing an obligation on prescribed reporting entities to furnish a statement in respect of a transaction of crypto assets. The statement will be furnished within the time to be prescribed. Then just go through subsection 2 and 3, and I'll take a pause here. Now this is all unclear. Will come in due course. Subsection 5. Now let's go to section 285BB. Now this is your AIS and 26 sales. Now, once the transaction is reported by the specified person, the second step is the reporting is done, but then what next? This transaction has to be loaded into the concerned particular person's PAN number, right? So what it says, the authority is empowered or it has to upload in the registered account of the assessee. That means the assessee's login credentials and AIS in a particular manner, in a prescribed form and within the prescribed time. A registered account means electronic filing account registered by the assessee with the designated portal. That is the income tax website, and registration ID, we all know it's the PAN number of the person. So that is quite easy to understand. Then they have given the timelines. So nothing much to discuss in this section. Now let's see section 288. Appearance by authorized representative. And this is also very, very important practical session. Practical section, and you must know who is authorized to appear on behalf of the assessee, or who can be an authorized representative. Now, the requirement is generally for the assessee to appear himself, but he may attend the office of department through an authorized representative. Now, there is one exception, and that exception is in relation to section 131, where a person is required to attend personally for examination on oath or affirmation. What is the meaning of the term examination on oath? क्या समझते हैं आप इसके बारे में? Examination on oath. क्यों इसका requirement होता है? सर्च वाला चैप्टर हो गया ना आपका? Now, who can be an authorized representative? A related person in any manner, employed by the assessee, यानी employee, officer of scheduled bank. तो अगर आपका अकाउंट है स्टेट बैंक ऑफ इंडिया में, आपको इनकम टैक्स से नोटिस आता है, तो आपकी जगह बैंक का ऑफिसर भी जाके आ सकता है. आप प्रैक्टिकली आप देखेंगे कोई जाएगा नहीं. इट इज वेरी लीस्ट एक्सप्लोर्ड ऑप्शन, किसी को पता भी नहीं होगा, बट लॉ अलाउज कि आप इनकम टैक्स ऑफिसर. क्योंकि पहले क्या होता था, पहले चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट्स इतने नहीं होते थे, एंड दूसरी चीज पहले बैंक के ऑफिसर को ही माना जाता था कि फाइनेंशियल ट्रांजैक्शन के बारे में ही इज द होल एंड सोल ऑफ द वर्ल्ड. सो बोलेंगे ठीक है चलो यार, मैंने जो ट्रांजैक्शन की अभी मैं समझाऊं उससे बेटर है मेरा बैंक ऑफिसर अच्छा समझाएगा, तो बैंक ऑफिसर को भेज देते थे. लीगल प्रैक्टिशनर, सो दैट मीन्स अ लॉयर. अकाउंटेंट, फिर लिखते हैं दैट इज अ चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट who holds a valid certificate of practice under section 6(1). However, following persons are not included in the definition of accountant. A company, a person who is not eligible for appointment as an auditor of the said company is not an accountant. Namely, तो अभी उसमें पूरी डेफिनेशन दी हुई है 141(3) की, तो मैं डिटेल में नहीं जा रहा हूँ क्योंकि ये सब आपको पता ही है. सो ये सब एलिजिबल नहीं है. तो ये सब अकाउंटेंट नहीं है, ये वो बता रहे हैं. A person who has passed an accountancy examination recognized in this behalf by the board यानी CBRT. अभी फिर रूल 50 प्रिस्क्राइब करता है कि अकाउंटिंग एग्जामिनेशन रिकॉग्नाइज्ड फॉर दिस पर्पस मींस व्हाट. तो ये सब कवर्ड है. नेशनल डिप्लोमा इन कॉमर्स अवॉर्डेड बाय ऑल इंडिया काउंसिल फॉर टेक्निकल एजुकेशन. गवर्नमेंट डिप्लोमा इन कंपनी सेक्रेटरीशिप. फाइनल एग्जामिनेशन ऑफ ICSI. फाइनल एग्जामिनेशन ऑफ द ICWA. CBRT का डिपार्टमेंटल एग्जामिनेशन. रेवेन्यू ऑडिट एग्जामिनेशन फॉर सेक्शन ऑफिसर्स कंडक्टेड बाय द CNG ऑफ इंडिया. ये सब अकाउंटेंट है. एनी पर्सन हु हैज एक्वायर्ड सच एजुकेशन क्वालिफिकेशन एज द बोर्ड में प्रिस्क्राइब, फिर प्रिस्क्राइब किया रूल 51 में, कौन से हैं? A degree in commerce or a degree in law conferred by the following universities. एक बार आप देख के जाना, ये सिर्फ have a you know kind of a basic. Interestingly, इन्होंने अभी तक अमेंड नहीं किया है. पाकिस्तान यूनिवर्सिटी, any Pakistan university incorporated by any law for the timing in force, तो वहां से जिसने क्वालिफाई किया है वो यहाँ पे अपीयर हो सकता है. तो आप देखेंगे इसमें ज्यादातर फॉरेन की हैं, आयरिश, स्कॉटिश, इंग्लिश एंड वेल्श यूनिवर्सिटी, रंगून यूनिवर्सिटी एंड एनी इंडियन यूनिवर्सिटी इनकॉर्पोरेटेड, एनी अदर पर्सन. तो अगेन एनी अदर पर्सन में भी उन्होंने किया हुआ है. फॉलोइंग पर्सन शैल नॉट बी क्वालिफाइड टू रिप्रेजेंट एन एसएससी. अब पाकिस्तान सरप्राइजिंग, बट जब रिलेशन अच्छे थे तब डाल दिया, अभी रिलेशन बिगड़ गए तो निकालना भूल गए. व्हाटएवर पर्सन्स. हाँ, एक लॉजिक इसका हो सकता है कि सी इनकम टैक्स एक्ट केम इनटू 1961, ठीक है. 1961 में ये लॉ आया, उससे पहले था 1922. व्हाट आई एम जस्ट मेकिंग अ गेस, वाइल्ड गेस. 1961 में एक्ट आया, ये देखना पड़ेगा कि ये कब से है. मेरे ख्याल से तब से ही होगा. अभी 1947 पाकिस्तान यूनिवर्सिटी, आई थिंक उसी टाइम पे ही होगा. कुछ तो थॉट होगा कि उस टाइम पे दे माइट हैव थॉट कि चलो वहां से जो पास करके यहाँ पे माइग्रेट हुए और वो फाइनेंस और टैक्सेशन फील्ड के हुए, तो उनको अगर लिटिगेशन का काम नहीं मिलेगा तो मजा ही नहीं आएगा, तो दे दो डिग्री उनको भी, अलाउ कर दो कि अपीयर हो जाए. पर अभी प्रैक्टिकली बहुत कम लोग मिलेंगे ऐसे. व्हाटएवर दे हैव कवर्ड. फॉलोइंग पर्सन शैल नॉट बी क्वालिफाइड टू रिप्रेजेंट एन एसएससी. तो आपको याद रखना है, थोड़ा थोड़ा कंपनी लॉ जैसा ही है. डायरेक्टर के जो डिस्क्वालिफिकेशन है उसी तरीके से ही देख लीजिए. अ पर्सन हु हैज बीन डिसमिस्ड और रिमूव्ड फ्रॉम द गवर्नमेंट सर्विस, convicted of offense, person who has become insolvent, a person convicted by a court of an offense involving fraud. So थोड़ा थोड़ा कंपनी लॉ जैसा है, so you might remember. So I'm not getting into it in detail. Just accountant की definition and all is quite important. Power to tender immunity from prosecution. Prosecution का आप क्या मतलब समझते हैं? What is the prosecution? जेल में डाल देना. Prosecution, right? So you prosecute somebody in the court of law for any offense which is committed by a person. Now, सिंपल सा एग्जांपल ले लीजिए. आपने पढ़ा ही होगा पेनल्टी चैप्टर, उसमें इफ यू फेल टू डिपॉजिट द टीडीएस विद इन टाइम, इफ यू फेल टू फाइल द रिटर्न, इफ देयर इज अ केस ऑफ अ टैक्स एवेजन, तो कमिश्नर ऑफ इनकम टैक्स को पावर है कि वो मैजिस्ट्रेट में कंप्लेंट फाइल करे, एंड देन द कंसर्न कोर्ट, मैजिस्ट्रेट कोर्ट और सेशन कोर्ट एट द केस में भी, दे विल लिसन टू द केस और आपको फिर जेल हो सकती है. और अगर आपको उससे छूटना है तो आपको कंपाउंडिंग का एक ऑप्शन रहता है. इफ यू फाइल फॉर अ कंपाउंडिंग यू गेट सम रिलीफ बट बाय पेमेंट ऑफ कंपाउंडिंग फीस. देयर आर कंपाउंडिंग गाइडलाइंस व्हिच इज प्रोबेबली नॉट इन योर सिलेबस, एंड लाइकवाइज this is an immunity from prosecution. I think we had discussed section 270 capital A and double A जब मैंने बताया था immunity from prosecution and penalty कमिश्नर कब देते हैं जब आप टैक्स पे कर दो and all of it. So ठीक है अभी उसमें नहीं जाते. 291 सिंपली गवर्नमेंट को एम्पावर करता है कि वो इम्यूनिटी दे सकती है. बट इम्यूनिटी देने की कंडीशन क्या है? गवर्नमेंट को एक ओपिनियन फॉर्म करना है कि पब्लिक इंटरेस्ट में उस बंदे को इम्यूनिटी दे दो, यानी जेल में मत डालो, प्रोसिक्यूशन फाइल मत करो, प्रोवाइडेड वो कुछ एविडेंस दे सकता है आपको अबाउट द कंसीलमेंट ऑफ इनकम और इवेजन ऑफ पेमेंट ऑफ टैक्स ऑन एनी इनकम टैक्स अंडर द एक्ट. ठीक है, वो उसके बारे में भी हो सकता है, किसी और के बारे में भी हो सकता है. अगर आप जेल में डाल दोगे तो सब चला जाएगा. बोले ठीक है इम्यूनिटी. एंड दूसरी चीज एक तरीके का रिवॉर्ड भी है कि इफ यू अगर आप हमें हेल्प करेंगे तो हम आपको ये नहीं करेंगे, हम आपको वो नहीं करेंगे, जो कि बोलते रहते हैं डिपार्टमेंट वाले. सो दिस इज अबाउट दिस. नाउ अ टेंडर ऑफ इम्यूनिटी मेड टू और एक्सेप्टेड बाय द पर्सन shall render him immune from prosecution for any offense in respect of which tender was made or from the imposition of any penalty under the act. लेकिन अगर गवर्नमेंट को लगता है कि नहीं वो बंदा गैर फायदा ले रहा है इम्यूनिटी का, तो गवर्नमेंट विल रिकॉर्ड अ फाइंडिंग टू दैट इफेक्ट एंड इम्यूनिटी विड्रॉ कर देगी. विड्रॉ कर देगी तो फिर से प्रोसिक्यूशन प्रोसीडिंग शुरू हो जाएंगे, फिर से कोर्ट के झंझट शुरू हो जाएंगे उस बंदे के लिए. And any such person may be tried for the offense in respect of which tender of immunity was made if he appears to have been guilty in connection with the same matter and shall also become liable to the imposition of penalty to which he otherwise would have been liable. तो दे भी सकते हैं, देने के बाद पता चला कि नहीं कुछ नहीं हो रहा है तो फिर विड्रॉ भी कर सकते हैं. विड्रॉ करेंगे तो सेम जो था वो वापस रिस्टोर हो जाएगा. Cognizance of offense and bar of suit in civil courts. क्या समझते हैं आप इस सेक्शन की हेडिंग से? दूसरा कुछ नहीं पढ़िए, सिर्फ ये बताइए इसका मतलब क्या. Cognizance of offenses and bar of suits in civil courts. छोटा सेक्शन है बट इम्पैक्ट काफी अच्छा खासा आता है. छोटा है बट इफेक्टिव है. No court inferior to that of a presidency magistrate or a magistrate of the first class shall try any offense under this act. मतलब इस लाइन का मतलब क्या समझते हैं आप? सेकेंड पॉइंट तो आप समझ जाओगे इजीली, तो वो मैं डिस्कस नहीं करता हूं. फर्स्ट का मतलब बताइए, शुद्ध हिंदी में बताइए, अगर इंग्लिश में कंफर्ट नहीं हो तो. दो बार पढ़ के ट्राई कीजिए. एनी आंसर संजय? चलो इसको नेक्स्ट सेशन के लिए रखते हैं, ठीक है. आप सोच के समझ के रिसर्च करके फिर बताना. बट बताना, अगर बताएंगे तो पॉइंट डिस्कस होगा, नहीं तो छूट जाएगा. 292 बी हमारा हो गया, सी भी हो गया. ये भी अच्छा है, दिस इज ऑल्सो गुड वन, सेक्शन 294. आई थिंक सेल्फ एक्सप्लेनेटरी है। बजट नहीं आया, फाइनेंस एक्ट इनेक्ट नहीं हुआ, राइट, इजी। सेक्शन 295 एंड 296 अगेन रूल मेकिंग पावर। अभी ये शेड्यूल्स हैं, ये शेड्यूल्स आई डोंट थिंक आपके सिलेबस में है, तो जस्ट नॉलेज के लिए हैं। ऐसा कुछ है इनकम टैक्स के एक्ट के पीछे। देन सेक्शन 293C। आई थिंक लेट्स हैव सम डिस्कशन ऑन दी, बिकॉज ये सेल्फ एक्सप्लेनेटरी हैं। एक दो जुडिशियल डिसीजंस देख लेते हैं। CIT वर्सेस V शिवा कुमार 354 ITR 9 Madras High Court. Can a loan exceeding the specified limit advanced by a firm to the individual or sole proprietorship concern of its partner be viewed as a violation of 269 SS to attract the levy of penalty? तो इस केस में प्राइमा फेसी इट सीन्स कि हाँ सेक्शन तो वायोलेट हुआ है, बिकॉज partnership firm is a person, answer is yes, it is a person. Whether proprietorship is a separate person, answer is yes. Transaction is between firm and partner, answer is yes. But इस केस में जो रिलीफ दिया गया है पेनल्टी से, उसमें assessee has acted bona fide and that there was a reasonable cause within the 273B. And bona fide किस basis पे establish किया? There is no separate identity for the firm and that the partner is entitled to use the funds of the firm. Now, in today's time, it is very difficult to argue कि ये case पे favor मिल सकता है. But having said that, this is what it is and you have to remember it. You have to give both the views and then conclude that, okay, Madras High Court has held this. एसटी आपने बहुत देख ली है, अच्छे वाले देखते हैं। मनोज काबरा 364 ITR 541 Allahabad High Court. Can AO suo motu assume jurisdiction to declare the sale of property as void? Let's read it and see if anything requires explanation. The legislature had no intention to confer any exclusive power upon the authority to decide any question arising under 281. The Act doesn't prescribe any adjudicatory machinery for deciding any question which may arise under 281. In order to declare a transfer as fraud or fraudulent, the appropriate proceeding in accordance with the law was required to be taken under 53 of the Transfer of Property Act. A was required to file a suit for declaration to the effect that the transaction was void, but he himself cannot assume jurisdiction to declare the sale deed as void. So, 281 में जरूर ऐसा लिखा है कि he can declare that transaction would be void subject to satisfaction of certain conditions, but at the same time they are saying that suo motu वो नहीं कर सकता. Transfer of Property Act का process follow करो. Let the specified authority in consultation with the statutory auditor declare it. Lakshman Das Khandelwal, very, very important and quite often used by the department as well as by the assessee. Omission to issue 143 to notice a defect not curable in spite of participation by the assessee in assessment proceeding. Without the statutory notice, AO cannot assume jurisdiction. 143(2) क्या बोलता है? It is a notice issued or served. As per law, it has to be served, not issued. So, अगर ऑफिसर 143(2) सर्व करेगा तो ही इज इंटेंडिंग टू इनिशिएट द फॉर्मल असेसमेंट प्रोसीडिंग. अगर 143(2) नहीं है तो स्क्रूटिनी हो ही नहीं सकता. दैट्स अ फर्स्ट. इट्स अ गेटवे प्रोविजन फॉर द डिपार्टमेंट. दे हैव टू कंप्लाई विद इट. नाउ क्वेश्चन इज, अगर नोटिस इशू नहीं हुआ, सब्सिक्वेंटली एसएससी ने कोऑपरेट किया, जवाब दिए एंड फिर ऑर्डर पास हुआ, तो इज इट अ क्योरेबल डिफेक्ट? नाउ लेट्स रीड इट. 292 क्या बोलता है? The SSC had participated in the proceedings by way of legal action, by way of legal fiction. Notice would be deemed to be valid even if there be infractions as detailed in the said section. The scope is to make service of notice having certain information to be proper and valid if there was requisite participation on the part of the SSC. However, the section does not have complete absence of issuance of notice. For the sections to apply, the notice must have been issued. So defect तब आइडेंटिफाई होता है जब एड्रेस में गलती हो, पिन कोड में गलती हो, सेक्शन मेंशन करने में गलती हुई हो, कुछ एसएससी के नाम के स्पेलिंग में गलती हुई हो, कंटेंट ऑफ द नोटिस में थोड़ी बहुत गलती हुई हो. सो ऑल ऑफ दिस इज अ क्योरेबल डिफेक्ट. नोटिस ही नहीं इशू किया तो रेक्टिफिकेशन का क्या मतलब है? इट्स अ कंप्लीट एब्सेंस ऑफ नोटिस. दैट इज नॉट अ क्योरेबल डिफेक्ट. So I think with this we conclude today's session. And if there are any questions, please feel free to ask. We still have a couple of minutes to go, or otherwise we can conclude for today. I hope you are enjoying these sessions. You are taking maximum benefit. Is there any way we can improve? Please feel free to write to the institute or mention in the comment box so that we can take it up appropriately. All right. So good night. Have a good time. Ashok ji, shall we conclude? Yes. Thank you. Good night.